Let's talk about Qatar, the small country located on the Arabian Peninsula, which packs an almighty economic punch. 11,500 square kilometres in size, with a population of around 3 million, the majority of which are expats, and who all more or less live in Doha, but owner of 1/3 of the world's identified natural gas reserves. A GDP of 237 billion in 2022. Now, although that's just outside the top 50 global GDPs, it's within the top 5 when considering GDP per capita. 6% annual GDP compound growth between 2018 and 2022. And remember, that includes the COVID period, and 3 consecutive years of GDP growth over 5%. That's the highest in the GCC. And if you want to hear more about Qatar and its economic outlook, I would highly recommend PwC's excellent Qatar Economic Watch.
The next 5 years are really fundamental for Qatar. How can Qatar leapfrog into a high impact, a high return, differentiated transformation story?
But despite this wealth of natural resources, the government of Qatar knows that nothing lasts forever, and that diversification, particularly in relation to tourism, is key. And if you want to be the #1 destination for family tourism in the region, well, you're going to need 3 things. 1, world-class attractions and events. 2, great places to stay. And 3, a premium airline connecting your country to 170 destinations worldwide. And luckily for Qatar, it already has all 3. Let's start with the World Cup. Think back to 2022 and the amazing pictures that we saw coming from Qatar. The event was huge, and although Qatar already had sporting events such as the Formula 1, this really launched the country as a global destination. And by any measure, it was a phenomenal success. The football was fantastic. The final was one of the best ever, and the entire event was delivered safely and securely. The stadiums were ready, the logistics worked, and there wasn't a hint of violence or trouble. Fans easily entered the country through the new visa program and were whisked around the city in the brand new Doha Metro. And at the end of the event, that small Arab country on the Arabian Peninsula that could stand up and look the world in the eye and say, we can deliver. Building upon that success, Qatar has already been named as the host of the Asian Games in 2030. A deal for rugby's Nations Championship appears close to being signed, and the country must be in strong contention for the Olympics in 2036. So, we can tick off world-class attractions and events. Next is accommodation. Well, that's really a hangover from the World Cup. Qatar deployed all of its economic resources into getting ready for that tournament, with huge investments into hospitality, retail, leisure, and hotel accommodation. And they didn't go cheap. Most of those hotels are either 4 or 5 star, and they are there, waiting, ready to be filled. So that's tick 2. And the final tick, the premium airline, that's Qatar Airways, a premium full-service carrier flying to over 170 destinations around the world. A fleet of 250 modern, fuel-efficient aircraft, including the Airbus A350, the Boeing 777, and the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. Net profit of just over $1 billion in the first half of the fiscal year 2023-24, and carrying 19 million passengers in that same 6-month period, up 22.5% on a like-for-like basis. A core member of the One World Alliance, and 7 times winner of the World's Best Airline Award. But in addition to that, it also created its entire supply chain, with ground handling duty-free, catering, maintenance, crew services, all being delivered in-house under the Qatar brand, and a business built around a hub and spoke model, focusing on transferring passengers from east to west via its hub in Doha. So if you talk about Qatar Airways, you also need to talk about Hamad International Airport. 600,000 square meters of terminal space, 44 gates, 146 remote stands, 2 parallel runways, and 46 million passengers in 2023, on target for 50 million passengers in 2024. So, world-class events, great accommodation, and a premium airline. Qatar is primed and ready to go, but it's not a done deal, and there is still work to be done. Number 1, global landmark events are crucial, but the week-to-week activities still need to be built out. A value-for-money city break to Doha might be a great proposition, especially for families. But to get return visits and extended stays, world-class food, theatres, museums, parks, and other attractions all need to continue to be developed. And this takes time. Dubai is the benchmark here, with its wealth of attractions, but that's taken at least a decade and millions and millions and millions of dollars. Number 2, advertising. The World Cup was fantastic, but tourists have notoriously short memories and like what they know. Qatar is going to have to continually invest into key markets and remind tourists of the fantastic experience that awaits. And if you're watching this in June 2024, you will see this continued brand investment in and around the European Football Championships. And 3, connectivity. Qatar Airways is fantastic and its global network is one of the best in the world. But as we've said before, its core business is moving people east to west through Doha. Work is going to be required to tap into the point-to-point demand, not only from the GCC, but the entire subcontinent. And that's not easy. Hub and spoke and point-to-point are very different things, and you can't just switch between the two. However, none of this is insurmountable. As we said right at the top, Qatar is one of the wealthiest countries per capita in the world, and it clearly has the ambition, the resources, and the proven ability to sit at the very top table.